live from their backyard. It's the Keith and Aaron Bullshit Show, where a father and son discuss movies, television, and whatever else they can come up with. So, hello, my name is Aaron.
I'm Keith.
This is the debut episode of the Keith and Aaron Bullshit Show. And we just got to thinking, it'd be fun to try doing a podcast, because we like to discuss movies and TV shows and what we would do if we had the power to, just for example, fix what we feel like is currently broken in a particular situation.
Okay. This all came about because we enjoy cigars, and we sit in our backyard every weekend and have a nice smoke, and we talk about these things. And in discussing them, we realized that we have a lot of opinions, and we want to share those with people, whether they want us to or not.
Exactly, because...
So just keep in mind that these are our opinions. They mean absolutely nothing to anyone but us, but it's all in fun.
Exactly.
So enjoy or not. And if we offend you, sorry, but it's our opinion.
Exactly. Just because you like Star Trek Discovery doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means...
We don't.
We don't. So, one of the things we occasionally like to talk about is who we might cast in a movie or a TV show that's coming up. And one of the things we saw today is that Johnny Depp may be playing the Joker in Rob Pattinson's The Batman. And we've already had some talks about how we feel about Rob Pattinson playing Batman. Maybe we should start there before we go any further. How do you feel about a Sparkle Vampire playing the Batman? Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that? Okay. Well, my thing is this. I in some cases I like to play devil's advocate here, because while I don't love Rob Pattinson, I've heard that he's done movies outside of Twilight. I've never seen them.
Well, to be fair,
neither
have I. I've never seen him in anything. I've never seen him in Twilight.
You've seen him in the fourth Harry Potter movie.
Oh yeah, he was in that, wasn't he?
Cedric Diggory. They
died. Killed him.
Yeah.
I wonder. Never mind. So, beyond that, and that was very short. I don't know much about him. I just don't have a good impression of him as Batman.
Well, I'll say this much.
I'm 61 years old. Batman has very distinct. There's two different Batman as far as I'm concerned. There's the Batman of the old TV show,
which you grew up
with. That's what I was a child, and I watched it and loved it, and it was cheesy and it was silly but it was great. And then there's the Batman of the comics, the Dark Knight, who is a great serious character. I've seen the cartoons, with Mark Hamill doing the voice work for the Joker on there, and it's great character. I'm just not sure Rob Pattinson can fill those shoes.
I understand your point. You may be very right about that. I still say I'll wait until I see a trailer. I'll wait until I see the actual movie to make a final decision. With that said, though, this is all about our opinion. And while we've given our opinion on that, if you were casting the Batman, who would you cast as Batman? Because there are a lot of people out there that can play the Batman, but there's not so many people out there who can necessarily play Bruce Wayne. And that's the thing about everyone who's ever played Batman. You always hear, well, Keaton and Bale are the best Batman because they were able to play both Bruce Wayne and Batman. Whereas George Clooney, not so much. And Val Kilmer, I always felt like he was a great Bruce Wayne, but not a great Batman.
I'll agree with most of that. Yes, I love Michael Keaton in the role. I loved, my mind just went completely blank.
Christian Bale.
Christian Bale, yes.
That's outside of the Bat voice. I mean, everyone still makes fun of the Bat voice.
The Bat voice was a bit over the top, but I'm not quite sure whether that was his decision or the director's. And you'll get used to it, but I probably say too much. There I go again.
Just make it a drinking game if you're of legal age.
Well, there you go.
You know, if you're listening to this and you're 14, we are not for you. We're going to curse, we're going to smoke, we're going to drink.
That's right.
Yes, we're talking about Batman, but we're also grown men that like science fiction and fantasy movies.
Yes, and you'll find that more often than not, I'm not as much on the. I'm not so much a fan of the comic book movies as I am of the other, and I'm more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan.
Okay, well, half of our audience is looking for our address on the internet now, and we'll have pitchforks here in the hour.
Again, my opinion. You're entitled to yours. I'll fight to the death anybody who says you don't have that right.
There you go. I agree. Okay, so, like I was saying, we're fan casting Batman, the Batman, but we need someone who can play Bruce Wayne and Batman. So, who are some actors that you think are talented enough to potentially play the suave, debonair head of Wayne Industries, and, you know, the brooding Dark Knight?
That's a really good question. And
now for our commercial break. Autobrand spark plugs. The only spark plug for you. Buy Autobrand spark plugs, or else we're going to kill the old man and the son.
wow.
Okay, I'll probably edit out the commercial, but still.
Yeah. You know, I grew up on actors like Jimmy Stewart and Robert Mitchum and John Wayne and Richard Widmark, and I could list them for an hour, that could be, many of them could be many different characters, and many of them were character actors who played the same person but in a different role many times, but they were all great at what they did. And it's very difficult for me to find that in today's Hollywood. I don't see great acting much out of Hollywood.
And the ones that you do see, let me just say, the ones that you do see that are really truly great actors, in my opinion at least, are in many cases those actors that bury themselves in a role. I mean, the whole thing that brought us to this discussion was the idea that Johnny Depp might be playing the Joker.
Yeah.
And, you know, that man has...
Great method actor.
He's a great method actor. I still think that Captain Jack Sparrow is probably one of the best characters ever created.
One of my favorites of all time.
And, you know, to take a slightly... a bigger deep into his filmography. I mean, you look at a character like Edward Scissorhands that I'm sure wasn't much on the page necessarily, but he brought that character to life.
True.
And then you've got Ed Wood, my favorite Tim Burton collaboration he ever did. He studied the films of Ed Wood to try and get inside the head of the man that would have made them. You know?
Yeah. Back on that subject, though, of who could play Batman and Bruce Wayne, I think that right now, at this point in time, there's only one guy in Hollywood that can do it.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Robert Downey Jr.
Okay. Well, yeah. I see your point.
He wouldn't have the arrogance of Tony Stark.
No.
But he can do the suave, sophisticated guy. we've seen how well he plays Sherlock Holmes,
That's true.
and it's phenomenal. And I just see that he could. I mean, we've seen him fill the shoes of Iron Man.
Yeah.
My God, if you can be Iron Man, you can surely be Batman.
True. I mean, the biggest issue with someone like him playing the Batman in this situation is that the director and writer of this new film, Matt Reeves, has said that this is supposed to be, a 20-something-year-old Batman during his second year as the detective.
Well, then we just hire one of the kids from Stranger Things. They're all almost 20 now.
It does seem to be Hollywood's answer.
That's their answer to everything these days.
Just hire a Stranger Things kid and put him on the package. I don't care if he's only in 2 seconds of it. I mean, okay. I've been trying to think who my go-to for a young Bruce Wayne would be.
Yeah, you didn't stipulate young.
I should have stipulated. Well, be thinking about a second answer if you want while I'm talking, because,
Okay.
My thing is this. My favorite interpretations of Batman, and it probably has something to do with my age, but I've always been a huge fan of Michael Keaton's Batman from 1989. I loved the way he played that character. It was dynamic. It was exactly what I thought Batman should be as a child. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that the first time I ever saw Batman was that movie. I had never seen the old TV show or the cartoon at that point, because the old TV show was not on in reruns at the time, and the cartoon wouldn't come around for 2 more years. Now, having said that, the next 2 interpretations that I truly love are the animated series Batman, as voiced by Kevin Conroy, and this may be controversial, but Batfleck. I thought he was a great Bruce Wayne and a great Batman. A lot of people are going to disagree with me on that, but the little bit we got to see of him in, 3 movies I think in total, because he had a brief cameo in Suicide Squad. He was in Batman v Superman, and he was in Justice League, and that was it. And I honestly wish we had gotten to see a solo Batman movie with that older, grizzled version of the character, because the little bit I saw, I liked, but I would have liked to have seen an entire story about that guy. Plus, they wasted Jeremy Irons playing Alfred. You get an actor like Jeremy Irons to play Alfred, and then you barely use him because, hey, we decided to scrap what we were working with. Now, I get it. Those movies didn't work tonally for me, but there were aspects, the actors among them, that I really liked. The actors for those movies I felt like were perfectly cast, with the exception of Henry Cavill. But I'm getting off topic. A young Batman, in my opinion, needs to be an actor who can portray both Bruce Wayne and Batman, as I've said. And to me, Taron Egerton from Kingsman would be a perfect young Batman. I say that because we've seen him go from that tough street thug to the suave debonair secret agent by the end of the Kingsman movie. And as a result, I think, okay, take away the accent, there's your Bruce Wayne. We've seen him tackle the stunts from those movies. We know put him in a bat suit, there you go, there's your Batman. That's my opinion.
Not a bad choice.
Have you thought of any young actors that occur to you?
No one really jumps to mind at this point.
Okay, well, that's all right. Let's move along with the next part of this discussion. So, Johnny Depp as a potential Joker for this new Batman movie. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think Johnny Depp is a great actor. He'll be a great Joker, but my God, they've done Joker to death. So many Jokers, it's ridiculous.
I don't disagree.
There's so many Batman villains out there that are just as well known, that we haven't seen, 14 times in the past 20 years.
I agree, and I should probably let you in on this because I was reading an article and I think it could help the flow of what we're talking about here. There's an article I read recently that part of the reason DC is in such a shambles right now is because they're basing all of their choices on what characters to put on the big screen off of market research. They've been doing market research over the last 3 years about who are their most popular assets that they have. Mm-hmm. That's why Harley Quinn just essentially got her own movie, even though it's supposed to be a Birds of Prey movie. It's because the market research has basically said, okay, so your top 5 characters that you own are the Joker, Harley Quinn, Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman in that order. And so now they're taking that market research and they're going, well, these are the characters that everyone likes and these are the characters that people want to see. So basically they're not making truly creative choices. They're making choices all about who can we sell this to? Oh, well, we can sell this to the people who are buying our toys and our comic books. But we have to make sure we only do the characters that are selling the most. So based on that to me is why they're doing Joker again. Although we've also seen just how great Harley Quinn did at the box office, right?
Yeah.
I like Birds of Prey for what it was. You haven't seen it. But it was not some great comic book movie that people are going to be talking about for years to come, right alongside The Dark Knight and the first Avengers movie or something, or Endgame even for that matter. So maybe, we've already said we think Johnny Depp would probably kill it as the Joker. So maybe instead of fan casting a Joker, what if we said who we would make as the villain in this movie? So you've got a rogues gallery out there, like you said, a mile long. Who is a character? Now, granted, I should also point out, you're not familiar with the comic books like I am. Most of what you know from Gotham or other TV shows that I've shown you. So, based on your knowledge of those shows, those movies, what do you think would be an interesting villain? Or who do you think should be an interesting villain?
Well, if I go back to my childhood watching the TV show, the Joker was a favorite. Cesar Romero was amazing.
I loved Cesar Romero as the Joker. He was great for that show.
And what an amazing actor outside of that. Anyway. But at the same time, the Riddler was probably my favorite villain of that show. And I think that, we've seen all these great backstories on the Joker now, or where he came from, the different, because there's different versions of where he came from.
Yeah.
And now we've got this new one with Joaquin Phoenix, and
which we haven't seen.
But again, I don't know that I ever will. But what I'd like to see is maybe we have a Batman story, and we learn where and why Edward Nygma became the Riddler.
Technically, they did that in Batman Forever, but I see what you're saying. Edward Nygma would be a great character to explore more.
And maybe that could be if they did this movie and they did it with the Joker, which apparently they're planning to do. Maybe Edward Nygma could be a character in this movie who they develop over the course of this movie into the Riddler, so that they can leave it with a bit of a cliffhanger to lead us into the next Batman movie.
That's not a bad idea.
It kind of would give us some sense of connection and continuity to the story.
I like that.
Which we really haven't had in DC's work so far,
with the exception of the movies that were supposed to be connected, that they're no longer that they're now like, okay, go away, redheaded stepchild.
Being Justice League and Wonder Woman,
Aquaman, Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, and to a lesser degree, Birds of Prey. Birds of Prey didn't even include, what's the actor's name? Jared Leto. His Joker was not in this movie at all. And to me, that was the biggest slight against the actor, because he apparently tried to get the Joaquin Phoenix movie shut down, because he was like, wait, I'm still under contract for like 5 movies to play the Joker. What's going on? And, I didn't have an issue with how he played the Joker.
No, I thought he did a good job with it.
But, along those lines, I love the idea of an Edward Nygma as the main villain. A villain I've always loved from the animated series that I don't know that you're familiar with, that I think you would have liked, was an actor friend of Bruce Wayne's, whose name currently escapes me. I'm sorry to all of you out there that remember his name. But he used an experimental compound on his face after having a bad accident that allowed him to shape his face however he wanted to shape it. And people talked about how transformative he was as an actor. But what happened was, one day he had put so much of this stuff on his face that he became a villain known as Clayface. And Clayface had the ability to shapeshift into anyone.
Wow. That would be a pretty... that'd be pretty intimidating and be very hard for Batman to fight.
Exactly.
Figure out who it was.
And that's why I think it'd be an interesting villain to use.
Be a great villain.
So
and you don't necessarily have to have just one villain in a movie.
No, exactly. See, I mean, although you also don't want to oversaturate, because you don't want to have...
you don't want to have too much going on so that you can't tell your story.
Exactly.
Obviously.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, because The Dark Knight is a very good example of that to me. People love to praise The Dark Knight as being the best Batman movie, but I'm sorry, I still maintain that movie is a Joker movie. It's not a Batman movie. Do you agree with that?
I'm sorry, say that again.
That the Dark Knight is not really a Batman movie, but it's a Joker movie.
Oh, absolutely.
And on top of that, they crammed another villain in there, because suddenly you're more than halfway through the movie, and you suddenly have Harvey Dent getting scarred in that bombing, and now he's Two-Face, and you have the Joker for 2/3 of your movie as the villain, and then the last third you suddenly have Harvey Dent as Two-Face to deal with. People can pick that movie all day long. I think it's a wonderful movie. I think it's a great movie, in fact. I just don't think it's the end-all, be-all of Batman movies.
There are 8 different versions of Clayface.
Oh, wow. I did not know.
8 different characters who became Clayface.
Okay, I did not know that. Wow. I'm familiar with the animated series version primarily. I've read the comics, but I don't know that I've ever read a specific issue where Clayface was the main villain. So that might be why I'm drawing a blank.
His most recent was a character named Johnny Williams in Batman Gotham Knights number 60 from February of 2005. And yes, I'm using Wikipedia to find that out.
Well, the internet's there for a reason. I was thinking an interesting topic would be something we like to play with from time to time, which is, if we were in charge of a particular franchise or a movie studio or whatever, how would we fix a franchise we feel like has had issues over the last few years? Now, I'm not saying specifically what we should talk about, but I kind of feel like there's something we've talked about a lot in the past that we could say a lot about. And what I'm primarily trying to angle my way toward here is Star Trek. If we were in charge over at Viacom CBS, because they are now merged again, How would we fix the problems that have occurred with one of our favorite long-running science fiction franchises? Now,
we can't put J.J. Abrams against the wall.
No, we can't put J.J. Abrams against the wall, Dad. That's not an option. We should probably preface this by saying we have not been happy with what we have seen, and I preface that with what we have seen of Discovery, which is just the first season. We've also not been happy with all of the Abrams films, really, but the third film, which was directed by Justin Lin and written by Justin Lin and Simon Pegg, that was Star Trek Beyond, the third film that Abrams produced. We were not as mad at that movie as we were at the previous two films, primarily because that movie tried to somewhat take it back to what we consider Star Trek to be. And while we're on the subject, we should bring up that we've seen, I think it's the first 3 or 4 episodes of Picard, and we really like what we've seen so far. However, there's a handful of things that are off kilter, I'll say. And primarily it's just a little bit of stuff I've noticed that is off kilter. So where would you like to begin with this? First of all, would you want to just completely demolish the Kelvin timeline?
Yes.
Okay, so Kelvin timeline would be gone. That would be the first step then. Okay. And how would you fix, assuming you want to fix, how would you fix the first season of Star Trek Discovery?
I'll burn it.
Okay, so again, you just want to destroy it, make it gone, go bye-bye. Okay, what about Picard? Like, so far we've liked what we've seen.
Yeah, I think Picard has brought us back in some small way to where Star Trek was originally, but it's also modernized it to some degree. There are a lot of things well, like I said, we haven't seen all of Picard yet. Obviously, there are 3 episodes still to air, and we've not seen the most recent 2. I've really enjoyed it. The characters are great. The story is great. One of the things that I've noticed in the online chatter about it is people are kind of people of my generation and those of us who are fans from childhood.
Okay, boomer.
Bite me. We're kind of dealing with the one story over 10 episodes thing.
Yeah,
that kind of, but I've gotten more used to that in that we've done a lot of watching of that type of show the last few years since we started streaming only.
That's true.
And so I'm not so hesitant to accept that. I actually enjoy it because it helps spread out things a little more. You had to wrap that thing up within an hour, 40 minutes or so, with every episode. And Star Trek has never done anything but that, with the exception of
Deep Space Nine and the Dominion War was the first time they started doing that kind of
exactly. And then Enterprise did a lot of that,
and Voyager did a little bit of that.
Voyager did some in the, they still had that overarching storyline of trying to get home anyway. Mm-hmm. So that was that to some degree, but Enterprise did a lot of it. DS9 did some. Picard's doing it now. And I'm enjoying that. I'm growing to like that there's a storyline that you're it makes you anxious to come back to it each week and see the episodes. Discovery, I know, is the same way, and it was the first season just did not appeal to me. It did not feel like Star Trek. It felt like some dark dimension of something that tried to be Star Trek but couldn't.
Yeah.
And I've heard that the second season is much better, and I haven't given it the time that it deserves probably, and I anticipate watching it. But if I were in charge of it, I was going to do it, I would scrap it simply because of that first season. Whether the second season's good or bad doesn't really make any difference to me as far as that goes. We need some things that feel more like Star Trek, more shows that have that continuity of community that show gave us. I would probably create a movie series that addresses a timeline, well, not a timeline, the same timeline, the original timeline, but happens at a period maybe even at the same time as some of the other shows, but in a different part of the galaxy with a different crew, involving different alien species that we haven't seen before. My gosh, look at some of the movies. We watched Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, last night.
Yeah.
And when you look at the council, the Federation of Planets Council, there are so many different species of aliens in there that we don't even have names for. I'm sure they may exist out there in the Star Trek universe somewhere, but I don't know what they are. And some of those aliens could be from different sectors that other ships are traveling through. And I think we could get back to that. And yeah, it could be more of a short series. I mean, well, we're talking about movies, but it could be more of a it could be a little darker. It still has to have that feel, though, that Star Trek has had.
Yeah, I mean, well,
that hopeful future.
The hopeful future thing, that's one thing I'm hearing from you. But the other thing I'm hearing is the mission statement that the first two series gave us, which the shows and movies have gotten away from recently, which is to seek out
new life and new civilizations. To boldly go where no one has gone before.
Exactly.
And see, that's the thing, now you've got, they always operated in the Alpha Quadrant of the galaxy. And then, of course, Voyager got thrown into the Gamma Quadrant?
Delta Quadrant.
Delta Quadrant, whatever. One of those other quadrants. So there's two more quadrants of the galaxy out there that haven't been explored by Star Trek, as far as we know.
Yeah. And when they felt the need on Discovery, this was something that rubbed both of us wrong when we watched that first season, which was they felt the need to go to a time period we had already seen explored. We're supposed to be in the same time period as Kirk's Enterprise, and yet they had all this space between Kirk's Enterprise and Jean-Luc Picard's Enterprise that they have not explored yet. We have very little information on the Enterprise B and C. What happened?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, I feel like it was a waste to go back to Kirk again. And I know they didn't actually go back to Kirk. I'm simply using that as a reference point. Although in this case, I guess maybe I should say they went back to Pike.
Right.
And I have no problem with them wanting to explore who Captain Pike is as a character, because the original series gave us very little about Pike. We have that pilot episode that they turned into the cage or the menagerie. I always get confused because they use footage from the pilot episode in that two-parter.
The menagerie was the episode they used. The cage was the two-part.
Where they gotcha.
At least that's my recollection.
But my point is that was what we got of Captain Pike in the original series.
Right.
And then they gave us Captain Pike in the 2009 Abrams film. And again, I had no problem with that because, yes, he was the captain of the Enterprise before Kirk was. But that was a completely different timeline all of a sudden. And I didn't like what they did with that. If you want to do an entire series based on Kirk's Bridge. Give me a modern day facsimile of that 60 sets. I don't mind if you amp it up a few notches, but as long as it looks visually similar to that 60 set, and you want to do an entire series around Captain Pike, Spock, and his number one, I have no issue with that. But the second you put me in a universe that's supposed to take place during that same time, on a ship that is so technologically advanced that it has a whole new form of traveling we've never heard tell of, which apparently they got sued over because that spore warp drive technology they use in that movie or in that show was supposedly lifted from a video game, and they got sued by the video game creators. And they settled out of court too. So I assume there was at least a little bit of guilt there if they settled out of court.
Evidently.
So, okay, you're fixing this. You're abolishing Discovery. You're abolishing the Abrams films. So you're in charge of Paramount Paramount in 2009 when they want to make Star Trek films. Do you just license Star Trek from CBS so that you can make it tonally fit with the stuff that's already in continuity?
Well, I think it would be crazy not to.
Well, see, that's part of the whole thing. Apparently, they had to do an alternate license that's got to be 25% different.
Right.
For those films, and that's part of why those films wound up the way they wound up. So you're licensing that from CBS. What movies would you have made in place of the 3 Abrams films? You kind of talked about that a little bit already, though, didn't you? You said what movies you would make. You'd make exploratory movies, but would they have been crews we would have been familiar with, or would they have been big screen crews that we were not familiar with?
Well, I think they'd have to be crews we were not familiar with. I think they need to be new.
Okay. And what TV show would you have made instead of Discovery? Would you have made a show set during the Pike-Kirk years, or would you have explored something else?
No, I would have taken it to a different time.
Okay.
Especially if I were going to use a ship as technologically advanced as the Discovery is.
Yeah.
I would have taken it way past where we've seen the shows on TV. That's probably 75% of why I dislike that show is the
inconsistency with the technology.
Inconsistency of technology. At this point in time, the only television show we have outside one, and Picard is a different take for Star Trek, because it's, first of all, it's about
it's about a man who was an optimist that lost his optimism, in my opinion.
True, who lost his hope in what was supposed to be a hopeful society, and that's good. That's okay. That's a good take. We've all seen some of that in the real world over the last many years, and but outside of that, I think right now the only show we have that is a Star Trek worthy show is the Orville.
The Orville. I love the Orville.
The Orville feels like Star Trek, but it feels like Star Trek in the real world as opposed to the super politically correct society that Gene Roddenberry came up with. Not that there's anything wrong with his society. I think it's a great, hopeful place for mankind to want to be. But, people are people. Let's be realistic. There will always be racism and hatred and things like that are always going to exist between people for some reason, not even good reasons mostly, but the fact of the matter, I mean, there's no good reason for some of these things at all, but even if you consider something a good reason, there's probably not. My point is, people don't always get along, and that's fine. That's the way it is. We're human beings. We're not supposed to be perfect. We'd like to be.
And see, that's why Star Trek was always so good when it was the Gene Roddenberry vision. I go back to what Jonathan Frakes said in an interview one time about, he asked Gene Roddenberry what the 23rd century was going to be like, or 24th century, whatever it was. And he said, in the 23rd century, there will be no more war, there will be no more greed, and all of the children will know how to read. And that was the society Gene Roddenberry wanted to portray on TNG.
Well, and I think that's pretty much the society we see on the Orville.
Yeah, for the most part. Except with the occasional fart joke.
Right. we do have the occasional inappropriate joke or
the Seth MacFarlane joke.
Yeah. But I think that as a whole, that show fits into Gene Roddenberry's society for the most part. I think if we had seen some of the behind the scenes of the actual workings of the Enterprise back in the day, we would have seen some of those same jokes and some of those same types of arguments or discussions or that we see on the Orville. People are people. They talk about things, and they if they become friends, or they might play practical jokes on each other, and that's one of the beauties of our species is we can do these things, and we can then back up and go, that was funny, let's move on.
Plus, because the Orville is not so politically correct, it's allowed them to explore topics that they never explored really much on Star Trek. The biggest thing I'm thinking of is the episode from season 2 where Bortus has got a pornography addiction.
Yeah.
And that was a really interesting episode because he gave the entire ship a virus because of using porn on the holodeck, which they don't call a holodeck. I forget what they call it, but you get the idea. And that was something you couldn't have explored really on a traditional Star Trek show, I don't think.
Well, and part of that was because of the time, too, that when Star Trek was on TV. And the audience it was aimed at. I think it was aimed... I'm not sure the Orville is necessarily aimed at young adults or children. I think it's aimed at adults.
Yeah, it is.
And those of us who are old enough to remember when the world had a sense of humor.
I mean, I honestly think that Star Trek is the thing that as a child I didn't want to miss an episode of, because I remember sitting on the couch with you as a kid and watching the original series and watching the original crew movies and watching TNG. TNG was one of my favorite shows growing up. I mean, if you looked at the toys I had as a kid, it was the real Ghostbusters, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Star Trek The Next Generation toys, because those were characters I loved. Although the thing I've always found interesting is how my favorite character on TNG has changed as I've grown up. And I always wanted to ask you this question because it's something I've noticed about myself. I find myself enjoying characters that I didn't enjoy much when I was younger, more as I get older. For example, when I was a child, if you asked me who my favorite characters were on TNG, I would have said Geordi and Data. But as a grown-up, I find myself enjoying Will Riker and Jean-Luc Picard more.
Well, you get more of their... you understand more of their relationship than you did as a child.
Yeah.
Where Data and Geordi's was more of a a boy and his dog almost kind of relationship.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah, because I mean that was who Data kind of confided in and talked about wanting to be human with mostly.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. A boy and his dog, a boy and his dog, they're the best of friends. They do everything together. They're always and the boy confides in the dog. He can talk to him about anything, and that's the way Geordi and Data were. And I'm not sure that either one of them was always the boy and the other one always the dog. I think it was a reversal thing. It was sometimes Data was the boy and sometimes Geordi was the boy. Obviously, very, very, very good friends, the best of friends, which was great. It was a great thing. I've never quite been on board with the idea that artificial intelligence could ever become self-aware. I hope it doesn't. I think that would be a dangerous thing. Although one Data in the world would be okay, because
as long as we don't have lore.
As long as we don't have lore, and as long as we don't have an army of Datas that
really
wants to take over the world like lore would have. But Data was always a great character. I always loved Data, although not my favorite role that
Brent
Spiner ever did. But always enjoyed the relation. It's hard to put my finger on any one person or any two people being my favorite characters on that show. Although,
well, honestly, I started gravitating more toward Will Riker as a teenager, but I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was, hormonal and it was like, hey, look at that, he's.
Well, he had the "ain't I something" clause in his contract.
Exactly.
Bill Shatner had it in the original.
Exactly. The "ain't I something" clause might be something our fan base should.
Well, the "ain't I something" clause just simply means that he had the clause where he got all the women.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or
men, because of that one episode where he fell in love with the androgynous species.
Yeah, which, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't really know how to respond to that, but yeah, that was the case, and so therefore it was with whomever.
Exactly.
Whomever the love story was with, most of the time, it was with him.
Exactly. Except for Vosh.
Well, yeah, that was
the captain's
Picard's one
exception.
time.
Yeah.
Until Q took her away.
I've always felt like that would have been an interesting character to have done a spin-off series with. You imagine doing a character with John Delancey's Q, or a show with John Delancey's Q.
Every week he's on a different world, screwing up their lives.
And laughing maniacally as he does. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left here, and I just want to bring up one more quick topic because I feel like this could be a pretty quick topic. There's been a lot of talk about reboots, remakes that are happening, and the problem is Hollywood is never going to stop these, even if we want them to. And the most recent reboot that offends my childhood to its very core, because it was something I grew up absolutely loving, is the A-Team is apparently getting another big screen reboot, but with Will Smith as John Hannibal Smith and Dave Bautista from Guardians of the Galaxy as B.A. Baracus. And it's not that I have a problem with these actors. I think Will Smith is a very talented actor. I think Dave Bautista is great as Drax the Destroyer. I'll be honest, outside of that, it's Spectre. Those are the only movies I've seen Dave Bautista in. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, first of all, what do you think of this casting news? And if we were in charge of the A-Team reboot, what would we do?
I don't know that Will Smith won't do a fine job with it. I just don't know if he's the right guy. I don't care You know, I guess the word would be a race reversal. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
that's
fine too.
yeah,
I don't care about that.
Well, I mean, like for example, if you had said Keith David from 20 years ago was going to be playing John Hannibal Smith.
Oh yeah, I'd be all over that.
Exactly.
Keith David would be great
Exactly.
as Hannibal Smith a few years ago.
Exactly.
If they were going to make new characters for it, and Keith David were still going to be Hannibal Smith, maybe sitting in the background planning their missions.
Yeah,
I'd be all over that.
A young reboot where it's like a young cast of soldiers and he's in charge of them.
Right.
Oh,
right.
Now that's not a bad idea.
See, and instead of being, well, I mean, they'd still be on the run from the law, but he would be kind of like Robert Vaughn's character was in the last season.
Exactly what I was thinking
of
the show.
Of the show, yeah. He could be hiding them because he was the original A-Team. You know, I know what you're going through. Here, let me help you hide, but I'll also help you find missions.
Exactly.
But I'm Hannibal Smith,
and you know, and I'm sorry, this could be the cigar in my hand talking, but while I understand you don't want kids today to smoke, and I get that, but again, this is targeted at adults, and I'm hoping I'm hearing an adult audience here for the most part. But you know, I just feel like you have to have that grizzled soldier who puts the lit cigar in his mouth and says, I love
it when a plan comes together.
Exactly. And, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's not that I necessarily think Will Smith would do a bad job. I just know he wouldn't be my first choice to cast in that role.
No, but I kind of go back to his character in Independence Day. And I think, well, you know, he's a little older now. Because that was 20 years ago.
Over.
Yeah.
1996.
So, maybe he is the right guy. I guess I'm, and I stammer a lot, I'm sorry. But the fact is, at his current age, maybe he's the guy.
Maybe.
Because I look back at the character he played in Independence Day, like I said, and he had that swagger, he had the cigar.
Welcome to Earth.
Yeah. And maybe this is a good choice. Dave Bautista, hey, everybody's favorite Invisible Man.
I love that you pick up on that. Yeah, exactly.
I think he'll be great because he's done such a great job as Drax. I can't wait to see who they cast as Face and Murdoch.
Yeah. I mean,
I think you need some mousy little girl that is kind of wacky and out there. Kat Dennings is Murdoch.
Oh, Kat Dennings is Murdoch.
She's not mousy, but she's a crazy little girl.
That's true.
Who could play Murdoch.
That's true.
And I think she'd be great. Face, well, you know, you got to have a face. And again, that could be man or woman. It doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have no issue with race. I have no issue with gender. I just want the characterization of the characters that are going to be there if they're going to use the original.
I just want it to feel right.
I want it to feel right. Exactly. I mean, the big screen movie from, God, I think it's been over 10 years now. Yeah, it's been over 10 years. But the big screen movie where you had Liam Neeson and I forget the guy's name, but I mean everyone in that Liam Neeson movie was cast perfectly.
Yeah.
God, I'm trying to remember who all you had there because you had Bradley Cooper was Faceman, and then you had oh gosh, I think he was a MMA fighter that played BA, but I'm blanking on his name. If you're wondering why I'm stammering like this, it's because my dad's currently looking up the cast for this movie. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Quentin Rampage Jackson.
Yeah. Rampage Jackson. Mhm.
And then, gosh, where's Murdoch? Oh, Charlton Copley.
Yeah, he was a New Zealand actor, but he was great as Murdoch. I loved him. He was so much fun. So, yeah. All right. So, in wrapping this show up, because we're almost at the hour mark, but I hope you guys enjoyed our first takes on some of the things we'll be discussing. We're gonna have different topics in each episode. But this is the kind of thing we do. We just bullshit about movies and TV shows, and we talk about what we would do, or what we think is currently wrong with what's going on. All in all, I think that's it for today. So I've been Aaron.
I'm Keith.
And we will see you guys in the next episode. Try and post this sometime during the week, and trying to have a fairly regular schedule, but I'm not sure how much editing is going to be involved. So we shall see. And signing off.
Bye.